Your Honor, no matter your age, race, or medical history, you do not expect to be leaving a grocery store on a stretcher. Unfortunately, that is what happened to my client, Allison Peterson, on March 23rd, 2011. It was a normal day for Allison and her cousin, Mika Drysdale, as they went shopping at GDI in search of a hot produce deal that was going on at that time. They often went to GDI to shop for these hot deals, because Allison considers herself low income and loves to get great deals on stuff that she needs. On this particular day, as they went to GDI, they showed up around 1 o'clock approximately and went and got lunch at the deli at around 1:05. They sat and ate lunch at the deli and began shopping at approximately 1:50 p.m. And at this time, that is when Allison Peterson went over to the produce section to shop for these overripe bananas that were on sale. And it was then that she slipped on an overripe banana, falling and breaking her hip and damaging her knee even more. A quote from the Barge County Hospital emergency room states, "After general evaluation, Allison was rushed in for x-rays for an apparent broken hip and knee problems resulting from the fall." And they also state, upon arrival, Allison had smashed banana residue on the sole of her right foot. Now, how did this happen, and how could it have been prevented? First of all, we know that the GDI is not unfamiliar with dealing with overripe produce. They know that it becomes easier to break apart, especially the bananas that become squishier and could be a potential hazard for consumers. A quote from Eric Danner, a Barge County Safety Inspections Inspector, states, "As a critical concern, many flies were on the produce department due to overripe produce." This was well before the incident that this was stated, so it is clear that they have had experiences dealing with overripe produce and they should know how to handle it at this point. Another issue, GDI has a store policy that states that the floors must be cleaned and checked every 20 minutes. Although, according to Deborah Billings, this isn't often carried out properly. Quote, "We checked the floor as much as possible and just signed showing the floor check was done during the designated time. In reality, the sales flooring is checked as often as we have time, but not exactly when the manager says to check it. But I do not argue about it. Instead, I just sign in the next spot." Clearly, this policy or this strategy for cleaning and checking the floor is not effective. Deborah also states that, quote, "I am not surprised Allison had an accident because the produce department is always a mess." This system has not helped the produce department floor be any cleaner. The floor is often dirty and not often properly checked, as Deborah Billings states, who is a GDI employee working at the deli. So even when the floor is said to be checked, it is completely likely that someone did not properly check it or just sign it off in accordance with the store policy. And that is a complete possibility that could have happened on this day that Allison was in fact injured. Lastly, another way that this could have been prevented is if proper safety measures were taken in the produce department to prevent Allison from falling. Even though that they could have checked the floor to make sure that no bananas were on the ground, or been extra precautious knowing that they were dealing with overripe fruits that were probably easier to break off and fall and get crumbled up and be dangerous to consumers. This was not the case. Timpika Hillstrom, the produce manager, states, quote, "I put down a rubber mat on the front side of the display and faced the sign towards the front. The sign could also be read from the back of the display, so I put a piece of carpet down." This is in reference to the banana stand, and as we know, with GDI's floor layout, that the banana stand has 4 possible points of entry. And considering that there were only two places of entry that were protected by carpet or a mat, and the other two that were not, Allison happened to be on one of the sides that did not have proper safety precautions set in place, and as a result, stepped on one of the bananas that had fallen on the ground. It was not cleaned up earlier, and smushed it because it was overripe. Slipped and fell, resulting in her broken hip and more damage to her knee. And from this fact pattern, it is clear to conclude that the negligence of GDI and their staff is responsible for the injuries of Allison Peterson, and should be held liable for any compensations requested by my client. Thank you, Your Honor.
Hello, my name is Quinn Curry, and I'll be representing Grocery Depot. We would like to start by acknowledging the fact that Grocery Depot has a responsibility to its customers to provide a safe space for people to shop. Grocery Depot wants to be clear that we hold this standard very high in our values. On May 23, 2011, Allison Peterson and her cousin Miko went to Grocery Depot after visiting several stores. Allison visited the store weekly to try and find deals, and Allison explains this in her deposition. Allison is also really good friends with a grocery employee, Deborah Billings, who works in the deli department. You could say that Allison enjoys Grocery Depot as she visits frequently and has a friend who works in the store. On the day of the incident, Allison and Mika entered the grocery at about 12:45 a.m. and went to the deli and purchased 2 sodas at about 1:05 p.m. This is according to the receipt and evidence. From there, they sat in the seating and chatted with her friend, Deborah. Now, I want to be clear that there are about 20 minutes that are unaccounted for between the time of entrance at the store and when the sodas were purchased. During this time, there could have been a line at the deli. They could have been walking around the store. Whatever the case may be, 20 minutes was unaccounted for from the time of entrance to when the sodas were purchased. Now, after sitting and chatting with her friend Deborah in the deli department, Allison went to find raisins on her own. After not finding the raisins, she then proceeded to the overripe banana stand that she noticed while looking for the raisins. According to the witness, Marty Langer, he saw her looking at the overripe bananas from his view at the normal banana stand. He then proceeded to the watermelon stand, and on his way there, he saw her bend down, quote, bend down to pick something up, end quote. At about 2 p.m., the store manager was notified that Allison had fallen, and they found her at about 2:05. After being called by Tampico, the ambulance arrived at about 2:19, and she was admitted into the hospital at 2:35. At the hospital, in the emergency room, she was found to have her hip bone cracked all the way to the hip socket, as well as her hip socket being fractured all the way around, showing signs of much trauma, as the emergency room doctor explains. He said her knee was shifted to the right and had been like that for some time. Now, Your Honor, the first thing that I want to make clear is that Allison Peterson did indeed have pre-existing health concerns. Number one, according to the Douglas Anderson doctor at the emergency room, Peterson has indeed had pre-existing health concerns. He said, quote, her knee had shifted to the right and had been worn into that position for some time, end quote. By some time, this means that it was not some sudden movement or anything recently that has caused her knee to shift to the right. Therefore, the fall or the incident had nothing to do with the fact that her knee was not in the best shape. Secondly, Peterson even mentioned to Douglas Anderson that her knee had been hurting for years. Thirdly, Dr. Rory Carmichael has been seeing Allison for 16 months and testified that her knee had been hurting so much that she was having trouble sleeping. And in the end, he ended up prescribing her with Vicodin, which is a very harsh pain medication. Typically, as well, Mika also goes to the grocery store with Allison Peterson all the time in order to help run and grab items so that Allison does not need any extra walking or anything like that. So Mika goes to the store because of Allie's poor knee. So my question is, if Mika is there to help run and get items, why does she not go to grab the bananas? Why weren't these same precautions taken on this day of the incident? And all of this evidence combines to show that Allison did indeed know of her pre-existing health concerns and chose to go to the banana stand anyway. Second, I want to be clear that Grocery Depot keeps their store very clean. We have an extensive safety strategy to make sure everyone is safe. We even scored a 96 on the health inspection on February 16th of 2010. Also, Tampico is great at making sure no leaking was possible by using a flat bottom display, as well as her efforts to check the floor every 20 minutes. According to Overpeck versus Rogers, the owner is not the insurer of the safety of shoppers unless caused by circumstances that were unnecessarily dangerous. So, combined with the fact that Allison had pre-existing health concerns and that Grocery Depot keeps our store very clean, as seen through the documentation that we check our floor 20 minutes and that Tampico is great at making sure our floor is kept safe, as well as the flat bottom display, it is clear that Grocery Depot is not at fault for Allison Peterson's incident. Thank you.